If religion says Adam and Eve are the source of human mankind, then why science reclaims the opposite? We always struggle to have a proper response for this universal question, thinking they are two contradictory questions. But what if I told you that these two paradoxes are not just two contradictory questions, rather they are two faces of the same coin? Let me explain. When we look through the Quran, most of people don't know the difference between insan and bashar. In authentic Arabic language, insan talks about the human from its spiritual, conscious, emotional perspective, whereas bashar dives deep into the human from its own biological, physical aspects. And God gave us many examples where He shows this difference from the Quran. In Surah Sad, verse 72, verse 74, قال ربك للملائكة إني خالق بشرا من طين فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعوا له ساجدين. God is precise. He didn't say I created the insan, which is the human from its spiritual, emotional, conscious perspective into tin. Rather, He said I created bashar, which talks about the human from its biological slash physical aspects from tin, and tin is dirt. The first example was to describe the human from its own biological physical aspects when God uses the word bashar, which is the specific word in Arabic to describe the human from its physical aspects. And here we give an example from Surah Al-Alaq. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لا يعلم. This surah was revealed into the Prophet, peace upon him, for the sake of teaching him, showing him his insan aspects, showing him his spiritual, emotional, and conscious perspective of him. And that's why God in this surah used the word insan instead of bashar. If all these verses prove something, is that there is a big difference between bashar and insan. When God gifted us with the Quran, He made sure to be precise with His own words selecting. All these minutes are just to say one thing, that the Darwin's theory is right. But let me explain. The Prophet Adam, peace upon him, is not the first human ever to exist in this world. And we see this clearly in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 69 to verse 70. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If we suppose that the Prophet Adam, peace upon him, is the first human ever to exist in this world, then why the angels said this? Why the angels, when God told them, I'm gonna bring a new Khalifa, they said questionably, are you going to bring new people who gonna kill each other and they gonna do bad in this world? Why they say this? Why they say it as if they already seen something similar to the Adam's creation process? And I know now you're thinking, Yasir, how this correlates to Darwin's theory. And I'm going to answer every question in your head. God mentioned some characteristics of the people who lived before us, bloody and primitive, just like dangerous crocodiles and bears. And with the earlier explanation between Bashar and Insan, we can understand that Insan is the conscious, emotional, and spiritual aspects of the human, and Bashar is the biological and physical aspects of the human. Consciousness plus Bashar equals Insan. Bashar plus nothing equals Bashar. The Khalifa that God was talking about in this surah might not necessarily look like us, but they might be something linked, and there is no big difference between them. In Surah Nuh, the Prophet Nuh complains to God on how he's getting mocked for delivering the message of God to his people of his village, mocking his prophecy of the upcoming tsunami that was going to hit them, replies to him with arrogance and tyranny. So in Surah Nuh, verse 11 to verse 15, يمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا ما لكم لا ترجعون لله وقارا قد خلقكم أطوارا. So here God directly says, whilst listing his blessings to the arrogant people of Nuh, didn't God created you in multiple versions? How you can mock him? How you mock the prophet of God, and God himself created you multiple versions before you are in this version where you can think. And I know many of y'all who never read the Quran before or even understood it. This was not the purpose of the surah and ayat. Okay, so what you're saying is that you are disagreeing with God, right? Because in Surah Al-Imran, verse 7, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وآخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعمل تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. So راسخون في العلم, and especially Ulul Albab, are for another day to explain. So in Surah Al-Imran, God says He's the one who revelated to you the book that contains firm verses and other verses with deep meaning. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن الكتاب وآخر متشابهات. And the verse continues. In Surah Nuh, God gives a letter to the people of the village whom intentionally resist the truth with knowing its credibility. And God be like, how can you not come into God's way? How can you not receive the truth, receive the logic? And God created you multiple versions that you are now able to think cognitively and logically, using your brain, using your logical side and emotional side and spiritual side. And I know that you're gonna stop me now and interrupt me saying that, oh, you took it too deep. God is talking about the cycle of dust to sperm to baby to man, and I make no sense. Take a breath and let's uncover this nuclear bomb. In Surah Nuh, if God wanted to give a biological example, then from the start the surah will talk about something that it's related to the biological and physical aspects of the story. God might talk in Surah Nuh and starts the story by talking about Nuh's people bullying him and assaulting him physically, or any reason that's related to the physical / the biological aspects. Then from the beginning of the surah he'll talk about the human from its biological bashar perspective, as we explained earlier. But no, he did not. Guess what he did? First, he opened the surah with talking about the trial to convince the community to get into something else, and it was convincing. We don't use the physical body, we don't use the biology, we use the intentions, we use the cognitive side, the conscious side, the spiritual side of the human, that insan. But guess what again? He did not. And furthermore, the purpose of the Surah Nuh being revealed to the Prophet was only for one purpose: to believe in God, to ask forgiveness from God. And this whole surah gives a lesson to the nafs, to the insan, to the spiritual side of you and of our whole being. So with this amount of knowledge, what does that mean? Is that the previous Khalifa that God was talking about in Surah Al-Baqarah, the first Khalifa to be in this, because we are a Khalifa of God here. If we suppose that we are the first Khalifa to be in this fucking world, then why, when God told the angels, they replied to him almost with a question: are you going to put in this world a Khalifa that will kill each other and they will do bad in this world? And the characteristics of the previous Khalifa goes exactly with the characteristics of the human cave type of people, and it goes directly with the Darwin's theory, because we are Khalifa and the previous Khalifa was a Khalifa as well, so we are somewhat alike, although not fully. So it makes sense why science nowadays claims that our DNA is coming from a species that is way different than us, you know. And it's not a matter of science and religion conflict each other, but they are two faces of the same coin. And that's why science finds many DNA patterns of the human shared with multiple animals, amongst them monkeys and gorillas, through the previous Khalifa, the leftovers of the Khalifa that was before it. The same thing with fishes as well, because like science claims that some of human DNA is found also and shared with multiple different animals, amongst them monkeys, gorillas, and most of the creations that lives under the sea. And as we can see in this graph, the animals that lives under the sea and the animals that live into the jungle and the forest, there is in between something, there is like a lizard. And this just evokes like a crazy like conspiracy theory thing, which is people who claim that reptilians exist. I didn't believe at first about this theory, but now I feel like I'm more linked into it. Actually, reptilians exist, because if we can live in sync with animals from older Khalifas like fish and monkeys, it might just include as well like these lizards and the reptilian, like in the, you know, like in the imaginary picture, they also look like lizards. The reptilians look like lizards. So yeah, is it reptilians still influence our lives in a different way? Let me know what you think in the comments.